So, welcome everybody to Video Nasty Month. This is something that we've been thinking about for quite a while, and it's now reality. I'm very excited. Are you excited?
I am definitely excited, Wayne. We've entered the spooky season.
Yes.
We are 2 days away from October, Wayne. We will be hitting that Halloween month.
Being a film podcast, when it comes around to October, it's inevitable. We're going to be covering something Halloween-related, something horror-related. And we thought this was an interesting idea to do this.
Interesting, Wayne, and very British. It's not even the sense that the films themselves are British,
no,
but the idea of the video nasty is very British, isn't it? Look, we kind of got through this on the censor episode. It's very interesting to, you know, film fans. It's kind of idiosyncratic to the British audience.
Yeah, it's kind of a demonstration of how films at the time kind of reflected the time period, or were somehow, I don't know, indicative of the time period.
And do you know what, Wayne?
Yeah.
A lot of these films, they're not as salacious as they were made to be.
No, they're not.
And a lot of them, and I think our choices will prove this, are actually very good.
Yeah, a lot of them are very good. I think the problem is they get overlooked because they're controversial, and that's like the only thing people know about them. But yeah, a lot of them do have a lot of merit. They were very interesting films, like you say, very idiosyncratic.
But have you noticed a lot of these films, they aren't as bloody, they're not as explicit, they're not as gory, whatever adjective you want to use. Some of them, like the film we're covering today, which we teased in our, our House of the Devil episode. So I hope our audience has, had a week to gestate on that. And I hope a lot of you have went out and watched The Witch Who Came from the Sea. Because, this film, specifically this film, Wayne, is dealing with very important issues.
It is. Not bloody and gore issues. This is actually much deeper psychological issues, and that's something that comes up on a lot on our podcast. We like to talk about deep psychological issues depicted in film.
Wayne?
Yes.
Are we psychologically damaged in any way?
No.
It's a strong possibility.
It is, but I think that's what makes it so interesting listening to us discuss this. I hope so.
So look, we want to get to this film, but Wayne, let's summarize. Summarize for the people what we're referring to for, the layman. What is a video nasty?
Okay, so the video nasties, back in the late 70s, early 80s, there was this influx of these cheap exploitation movies.
Yes.
Sex, nudity, blood, violence.
Are you mentioning the good stuff, Wayne?
This is the good stuff,
right,
yeah.
Yes.
A lot of these taboo subjects that came in, and what happened is, back at the time, especially in the UK, the BBFC, the British Board of Film Classification, I believe, films had to be screened for this organisation before they made it into cinemas. But because of some loophole, videos didn't. So you had this wealth of all these cheap exploitation films that came into the country, one of the first big ones being Cannibal Holocaust. And essentially at the time, it just set people off. It was the country, there was bad stuff going on at the time, there was poverty and there was wide joblessness, and a lot of these films were actually, for some reason, blamed for a lot of this.
You're almost saying, Wayne, they are the Marilyn Manson of the 1980s.
Basically, yes.
They are.
In fact, it's even been pointed out, I think it was Mark Kermode said at the time, said in recent years, that these films became the scapegoats for the trouble at the time. Like, what do we blame this on? It's video nasties. We talked about in House of the Devil, the Satanic Panic, which was happening around the same time.
And this kind of fits almost in with the Satanic Panic, blaming something on an exterior what doesn't necessarily relate to the circumstance.
No, absolutely not. In fact, you mentioned before, they're not as gory, not as bloody. You'll get tentpole cinema releases around Halloween which are far bloody than this. Something like Hostel or the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre come out. A lot of those are far bloodier than this.
Keep teasing me, Wayne.
But because of the time they came out, they were highly taboo. There was in the UK, about 72 films that were banned.
72?
Yes, and we're talking titles like Cannibal Holocaust, Cannibal Ferox, I Spit on Your Grave, Last House on the Left, Faces of Death, even Sam Raimi's great The Evil Dead.
The Evil Dead
was on the list. Not prosecuted, but it was on the video nasty list at the time.
I wonder if we'll get around to Cannibal Holocaust, Wayne.
Ooh.
Is that a tease? Is that a tease, Wayne?
That is a tease.
What's wrong with the Italians?
I don't know, it was Deodato.
Yeah, Ruggero Deodato.
Yeah, that was...
they like their cannibals.
Yeah.
They like their jungles.
Have to be said, I love that film.
It's a great film.
Is it almost disturbing to say? I would say modern classic.
Very much modern class. I would completely agree with you there, Wayne. But look, you've summarised it, and I would say you've pontificated very well, Wayne.
Well, thank you very much.
But dear listeners, in our censor episode, very early on in our career,
episode 4, I believe,
and I'm saying career there, Wayne, and I'm sticking to that, guns. But in our censor episode, the film censor, directed by Prano Bailey Bond. I'm going to say that's almost a British classic, a modern classic at the moment. Yes.
Love that film very much. A lot of fun talking about that one.
Right. So in that episode, we had a segment explaining the video nasty controversy. But you know what? We also made a YouTube clip. Clipped from that episode. So if you want a more in-depth analysis of the whole video nasty controversy, you can YouTube us at In Film We Trust podcast, explaining the video nasty controversy.
Yes, and also, again, let's just put a little plug in for Censor. Fantastic film. If you are at all interested in the video nasties, of course, listen to our episodes this month. Also, go and watch Censor. Not only is it a great story in itself, but it does highlight the video nasty controversy very well, I think.
So, Wayne, where do you think The Witch Who Came From the Sea fits in with this? Because it's a 1976 release.
Yes, it is.
It's dealing with very controversial topics. Very, very controversial topics. Because this was directed by Mark Kimber.
I think so, yeah.
We're going with Kimber, aren't we?
We'll stick with that. If we're wrong, at least Kimber. We're wrong consistently, yes.
And, okay, I've got a quote from Kimber, which... Yeah. This will explain it when we get further into the film, but Kimber said, nobody back then, meaning the 70s, ever dealt with trauma. These subjects never belonged in movies, because then movies were purely, thought of as entertainment. Right. Is this entertaining? Is it a topical film? What are we going for, Wayne? Tell me.
I'll be honest, entertainment is not the first word that comes to mind when I think of this film. But like we said before, you were saying a lot of these movies, because of the controversy, they were overlooked and not regarded as being as good as they were. But I think this film is a lot more in-depth. It's a lot more interesting. There's a lot more facets to it. I don't think you can just call this a simple exploitation film. I think there's a lot more going on under the surface in this film.
I was a big fan of this film, Wayne.
Yeah, I really liked it.
This was a first-time watch. Obviously, you watch it 2 times. You kind of divulge yourself in the material to, talk about something. For me, it held up the second time. What about you? Did it held up the second time?
It did, yes. It's not just that it held up, it's the fact that when you watch it back second time, you're looking for different details and you notice more things as you go along the second time. Like when I was making notes, yeah, the second time, adding little bits here and there and noting my notes. So,
Matt Kimber, whatever we're going to say, okay? He's this director from the 70s, bred from the 70s. He was specialised in sexploitation films, blaxploitation films. And, I quite like a blaxploitation film, but his films I'd never actually heard of. I'll label 2, Wayne. Have you heard of these either? The Black Six and Lady Coco.
I've heard of Lady Coco, yes.
Is that insensitive, Wayne?
Could be about the hot drink. I don't know, like when I think of blaxploitation, I think of Dolomite films. They're the first ones that come to mind.
Wayne?
Yes?
Shaft?
Yes. Oh, and Shaft as well, of course.
Sweetback's Badass Song?
That is a good name.
Melvin Van Peebles?
Mario Van Peebles.
That's the son.
That's actually his son.
That's the son. He done New Jack City in the 90s.
New Jack City.
Melvin Van Peebles done Sweetbacks. Have you never seen Sweetbacks?
I need to watch more of these films, I think.
Come on, Wayne.
Should we have Blaxploitation Month?
Don't tempt me, Wayne. I'm considering that, as you say that.
Everybody let us know, do you think that's going to be a good idea? Also, here's an interesting thing on Kimber's directography. He did the 1982 film Butterfly, the Pia Zadora film.
Was that very controversial?
It was controversial.
Why was it controversial?
Well, backstage controversy is the fact that Pia Zadora, I think, was actually married to the producer at the time, who allegedly wined and dined the Golden Globe, some of the Golden Globe organisers. Yes. So Pia Zadora went on to win, I think, a Razzie for Worst Actress, but also a Golden Globe for Best New Star.
Really?
And everyone immediately said, yeah, there's foul play here.
Was Butterfly not, was that not nominated for a lot of Razzies?
3, I think.
Was it 3?
I think it was actress, picture, and director.
We'll need to cover like a film what has actually been, has won a Razzie. I don't think we've done that yet.
Yeah, got a great hero of ours in it, Stacey Keach.
Stacey Keach is
Stacey Keach is
Road Game Stacey Keach.
Road Game Stacey Keach. Yes. Pat Quid, Q-U-I-D. Yes.
Right, so Matt Kimber, one of his... Here's a fact that men may like, Wayne. some women may like as well. Do you know who he was married to, Wayne? Jane Mansfield.
Yes.
From 1964 to 1966.
Yeah, it was actually her last husband, yes.
That's a handful. In many ways.
It is, yeah. Also, and here's something that blew my mind. He was actually the co-creator and director of Glow, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, the professional wrestling promotion.
Yeah, from the 80s. Not the Netflix show.
No, not the Netflix show. Which...
The Netflix show is based on the 80s, you know, women's wrestling TV program, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, which, did you know, in the Netflix show, Mark Maron's character, Sam Sylvia, is based on Matt Kimber.
Oh, he's actually based on him.
Yep, but you've not saw Glow, have you?
No, you said it was really good.
Glow is really good, but, you know, Sam Sylvia, Mark Maron, in the Netflix show Glow, his character is more of a horror exploitation, you know, director.
Okay.
I would say the real Matt Kimber is, you know, he's delving into blaxploitation and sexploitation a little more than horror, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, with Matt Kimber, actually, this film, well, specifically to do with its writer, Robert Thom, this film almost came out of necessity because, do you know, Thom was actually seriously ill in hospital when this screenplay was being written. He
was writing it with an IV drip in his arm.
Which is kind of interesting. I think, in a sense, that plays into the feel of the movie because a lot of the film is the kind of blending of reality and fiction, not being quite sure if you're in one or the other. It's almost like...
Are you saying Robert was on too much morphine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in a sense, yeah. Do you see what I mean? Even the feel of the movie that, like, when Travolta was researching Pulp Fiction and he was researching the part of a heroin addict, he said it's what you need to do is get drunk on tequila and, like, lie under the water in a hot tub, and it's almost got that feeling, that kind of being underwater. Even water plays an important part in this film.
That's a long way to go for Travolta.
It is, I suppose.
He could have tried a bit of heroin.
Yeah, no, he didn't go that method.
No, he didn't go that method.
No, but because he was married to Millie Perkins at the
time.
So
Millie Perkins, she plays Molly, who is the protagonist of this film. So look, a lot of this film, as you said, was made out of necessity.
Yeah. And
why was it so controversial for the filmmakers themselves? Well, Robert Thom, as you explained, was married to Millie Perkins. So Robert Thom there is lying in hospital. Millie Perkins is his wife. She's the central character of this film. Well, they plugged from both their lives. Because Millie Perkins' real life dad was a sea captain.
He was a sea captain, yes.
And Millie Perkins, the actress, her, you know, she was really concerned. And especially, look, her sister was extremely concerned. She says, why are you going to sully the name of our dad? If people know this is, you know, brought up from your real life experience or, you know, a fictionalized version of your own life, people are going to think your dad is a fucking, you know, weirdo.
Do you think people were more inclined to believe that back then? Because especially if it's a film you hated, you're going to look at any excuse to chuck mud at it.
What do you think? Would you be concerned if somebody made a film like that on your dad and, you know, they twisted the story there?
Yeah, I'd be furious.
It's a weird way to build a story.
It is very strange, but I guess maybe because of the internet being more mainstream, it's easier to find this information. But back then, maybe a lot of people didn't realise that the dad was a sea captain and he was partially based on Millie Perkins' actual father.
I don't think it ever stated. What was Robert Thom's, you know...
I couldn't find
his own life experience.
All I found was it combined their life experience, but I couldn't find anything from his
side. Could either.
No idea.
I never, you know, before this, I didn't even know who Robert Thom was.
No, I mean, do you think it could have been drug misuse or alcoholism?
Maybe.
That could be part of it.
Yeah, bloody sailors, Wayne.
Exactly, yeah. But like you say about Millie Perkins, back then she became a big star. I think it was the
Diary of Anne Frank, yeah.
That shot her to fame.
That was 59, I think. 59, yeah. So it's a long time. It's you know, 15 or so years.
Yeah. But when you think of the studio system back then, studios had a lot more control over their performers, and she turned down what she considered a B movie and the studio dropped her, and she did this film a year later. And she was embarrassed by it. She says, I didn't want anyone to know I did a softcore movie. That's what I called it then.
Well, she had real problems with the nudity in this film.
Yes, she did.
Because there's a little bit of nudity.
It's quite prevalent, yes.
It's not explicit in the sense. It's not, you know, Nymphomaniac, is it? It's not Lars von Trier.
No, right enough, yes. But it's for the time.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I don't think... Again, we talked about you'll get tentpole movies that have more violence. I think you get modern mainstream releases that will have more sex and nudity as well.
What does it say about us? Like, the most we know of Millie Perkins is The Witch Who Came from the Sea.
Well, it's strange that, imagine that being defined by a movie that you really didn't like making, because I don't think she had the best of time making it. She certainly didn't enjoy the film afterwards. But Kimber seemed to have nothing but praise for her. He even called her a real actress, which was rare, especially for exploitation films.
You know, I'm not going to disagree, because I think this film is a really strong film.
So do I.
I've never saw The Diary of Anne Frank, have you?
No, I haven't seen it, no.
This is maybe better.
It could be.
Who knows?
But I mean, again, just going off the direction, yeah, I think Millie Perkins did a great job. Again, it's someone we'll get into. In fact, it didn't do well with critics. It didn't do well at the box office. Don't have exact numbers, but Kimber actually tried to boost box office numbers with a misleading poster, which featured, featured, quote, a buxom warrior witch straddling a craggy rock, a scythe in one hand and a bloody severed head in the other.
So the juxtaposition there is, it may have brought extra people to the cinema, but it detracted from the seriousness of the critical success.
It completely missold it.
Right.
That's the kind of thing you'd expect on a typical video nasty poster, like, you know, people, you know, blood everywhere, severed heads, knives. In fact,
or a Conan the Barbarian or something.
Exactly. Or like when we did Maniac, that poster was controversial. Was he just holding a skull?
A decapitated head.
Just a decapitated head, exactly. So it's
fucking
like
Joe Spinell.
Exactly. Trying to sell it on this exploitation, this gore, when at its heart, this movie is a psychological study.
It's a psychological drama, Wayne, with horror would you almost say, Wayne, this is 76, it's a proto-slasher. Could you make the argument there?
You could, yes. I think because 76, we're talking like before Halloween. When was Black Christmas?
That was 74?
That was round about the same time.
Yeah, it's roughly the same time.
So we're talking early slasher films, yeah. But like you say, that quote before, people didn't want to see this. Movies are entertainment. Movies are escapism. Which I think is an important theme in this film as well.
It's funny you say that. Hasn't cinema changed so much?
Yeah.
There's a sense that, okay, well, especially if you compare the 50s to the new Hollywood period, where, in the 50s or early 60s you had, you had the Hills Are Alive Again, Wayne. You had those lyrical songs, and then you had Easy Rider, and you had Five Easy Pieces. You had this movement, and we actually mentioned, quite recently in the post, Jean-Luc Godard died, and they brought this they wanted to bring this tactile, this realism to cinema,
this individuality as well.
This individuality, and throughout the 70s, the 60s, they always said it was swinging for the rich, and in the 70s is when it was swinging for everybody.
Yes.
So you get this sense that, okay, the morale is loosening in the 70s. We're going to explore the depths of trauma. We're going to explore the depths of human psychology. And this film does it in spades, way.
It was like a shift from entertaining the masses to telling the truth.
Right.
Telling these real-life dark stories. And I think that's what it probably was that upset people, that people didn't want to see this kind of thing on screen. Oh, think of the children kind of situation.
Wayne, when we said we had covered the video nasty in censor?
Yeah.
Are you thinking of that idiot politician who said you don't have to just, beware of your children, you have to watch the dog doesn't get possessed by this?
No, that's right. And that's the kind of thing I'd expect someone back then to say, because, again, we talked about them being scapegoats. There were politicians who would bring up video nasties in their campaign speeches. Rally out, boycott this movie, don't go and see this movie, which, of course, is just going to drive the viewing figures up.
It's very enticing, Wayne, isn't it? You almost want to see the forbidden. You want to get in some grungy cinema, don't you?
You're more likely to go and see it. It's like if your parents tell you not to listen to a certain band, that creates intrigue.
I wonder if Taxi Driver was looked at as grungy back in the day. It's a very grungy film.
It does have a very grungy feel, but like you say, that individuality, telling the truth. It's not the kind of film you put on, let's get some popcorn and sit down. No, it's the kind of film that explores underbellies, the kind of individuals in society, again, cast-offs, outcasts.
Taxi Driver, Easy Rider, at their heart, they're psychological studies, aren't they? Of a particular person or subgroup of people. And Taxi Driver is very individual, and Wayne, the witch who came from the sea, is working on that very same level.
Absolutely, because psychological studies don't all look the same. Like, the way this examines his psychology is different to how Scorsese examined Travis Bickle's psychology, for example. But yeah, they're done in very, very individual ways. And I think Simber had a very particular way of doing it in this film, because this film is, would you say it's kind of odd in the way it's presented?
Very odd, Wayne. That I think before this podcast, when we were, messaging each other after we'd seen the film, I think that was a word we both used, is odd.
Offbeat,
odd, peculiar, you know, any adjective or synonym along those words you want to use, because, you know, you in private life, Wayne, usually mock me when I use the word singular. Have you ever saw a film like this before?
No, absolutely not.
So am I right by saying this could be a singular film?
It
is a singular film.
It is a very singular film. It's got a very singular vision to it.